Before the war, okay. My name is Ron Azdell. I went to Mexico High School, graduated from Mexico High School in 1966, went to Wichita State University for 2 years, 66, 67, and 67, 68. Was majoring in aeronautical engineering. And ended up transferring back to the University of Missouri. University of Missouri finally started offering a degree in aeronautical engineering, so I moved back to Missouri. Started going to school there, and pretty much immediately lost my deferment, my school deferment, my 2S deferment. When the transfer, some of my hours didn't transfer, some of the grades weren't so good, that kind of thing. Some of the courses weren't even offered at Missouri. So I decided, and I knew I was going to be drafted, so I decided I wanted to get into aviation. That's been my passion, I guess, for a lot of years. Wanted to fly. So I went to the Air Force recruiter and decided that I was going to go ahead and enlist so that I could get to school that I wanted. So I went to the Air Force. Actually, I went to the Navy first because I thought the Navy pilots were probably the best pilots. If they could hit that little ship floating around out there in the ocean, it was probably a pretty good pilot to do that. But the Navy informed me that I had to have a college degree before I could fly. In their wisdom, they decided that you had to have a college degree to be able to fly, which all of us know is not true, but that's the way they do it. So then I went to the Air Force recruiter, and he said same thing, got to have a college degree. So I went to the Marine Corps recruiter, and he said the same thing, you got to have a college degree before you can fly. Everybody knows that. So then I went to the Army, and the Army said, boy, do we have a place for you. So I enlisted in the Army, went to Fort Leonard Wood. Actually, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana to start with for basic training, and was down there for about 8 weeks, and then went to Fort Walters, Texas for primary helicopter school, and then to Fort Rucker, Alabama for secondary school, helicopter school. Graduated from there on the 4th of November of 1970, and ended up going to Vietnam, and that's kind of the lead-in to the Vietnam era, I suppose. How did they train me? Well, I don't know how to answer that really. Went through basic training again at Fort Polk, and I learned the basic same stuff everybody does when they go into the military. Go through 8 weeks of basic training, learn how to be proficient in shooting a rifle, build up your physical endurance, have to pass a physical education or physical test. 6 different categories, I believe it was, and you were ranked on each of those. And then when I went to primary helicopter school, after basic training, mostly we learned 2 things. We learned how to be an officer. I was a warrant officer. When I got out of flight school, I was a warrant officer, ended up out of the service as a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer, 2nd class. So we learned how to be an officer, how to do a lot of paperwork, how to have a good attention to detail, and then finally how to fly a helicopter. So pretty much the prep, I suppose. Well, I don't know. I don't remember a lot about my thoughts of going to the military. The only thing I was thinking about is, am I going to advance my interests? Am I going to be able to do what I want to do? And my goal was to fly in the military, not only in the military, but after I got out of the military. So there was a sense of pride in answering the call to my country, I think, which I think most people that volunteer in the military have that sense of pride in wanting to serve their country and give something back to a country that's quite obviously given us everything we got. And So when I graduated from play school, that was probably one of the proudest moments of my life. Yeah, not very much of it. I went to Vietnam. If you want me to tell you about that experience, I guess. I went to Vietnam on about the 15th of February of 1971. And when I got in country, I went to a reception station in a town by the name of Benoit. That's where most everybody ended up flying into Benoit at the reception station there, and then was given my assignment with the 101st Aviation Battalion, which was in Northern I Corps up around the DMZ. So I got to the company, the Alpha Company, 101st Aviation Battalion, 101st Airborne Division, on the first day of March of 1971. On the second day of March, I can almost tell you day by day because I tell you up front, I was in the company 8 days. So I got to the company on the first day of March. The second day of March, I took my in-country orientation check ride with a guy by the name of Frank Triago, who I just met this past week for the first time since 1971. And he gave me my in-country orientation check ride, showed me around where we were going to be flying, our area of operation. And quite honestly, I don't think I ever saw a map the whole time we were over there. So, I mean, you just kind of memorized where you were supposed to be going. Memorized where the rock pile is, or where Firebase Sarge is, where Quezon is, where Quang Tri is, where Wei and Fubai are, And it's kind of like flying from here to Mexico and back. Once you've done it a couple of times, you don't need a map to get there. So I assume that was the reason. But anyhow, we didn't get a map. So on the second day, I did my in-country orientation check ride. On the 3rd of March, we went into... We were going to insert some South Vietnamese regulars into Laos to cut the Ho Chi Minh Trail to stop the supply routes down from the north. And there were 60 aircraft that were going to be carrying these Vietnamese into this one landing zone. When I call an LZ, an LZ is a landing zone. We got about the first 6 or 7 helicopters in there, and the next 11 helicopters got shot down in Vietnam, or in Lolo, LZ called LZ Lolo. 4 of them actually went down in the LZ, and the other 7 went down around the LZ, and the crews were all picked up. On the 4th day of March, we went into an LZ Liz. No activity in that LZ, and on the 5th day went into LZ Sophia and dropped people off in all of those landing zones. And again, their job was to try to cut the Ho Chi Minh Trail, to stop transportation of goods down the trail to the south. And on the 8th day of March then, which was the last day I was in country, we were doing an extraction in Laos. Went into an LZ in Laos, and which didn't even have a name, and got shot down in the LZ, and I was evacuated from there, was wounded, evacuated from there, and went to a field hospital in Quang Tri, and then from there to USS Sanctuary, and from there to Guam. I was on Guam for about a month, and then home. That was pretty much my experience. Never forget. Probably the whole experience. Yeah, I mean, things were happening pretty quick for me. I went into service on my mother's birthday, the 21st of September of 1969, and got out of the service on the 9th of July of 1971. And in that short period, 1 year, 9 months, and 23 days, I went from being a civilian here in the States to Vietnam and back and out of the service. So, I mean, things were happening pretty quick. Unusual events seem to be happening all the time there. pretty much, here's an unusual event, I suppose. The guy I was flying with, and his name was Bob Morris. And Bob Morris was in a different helicopter than I was on the 3rd of March of 1971 when we went into Lolo, into LZ Lolo. He was in the 17th helicopter and I was in the 6th. Well, they let the first 5 or 6 or 7 helicopters come in and nobody shot at you. Okay, so we got in and got out. But Bob was in the 17th helicopter and he got shot down in one of the helicopters that was in the landing zone. Later on that day, everybody was retrieved out of there. We didn't lose anybody in that LZ. But 5 days later, he got shot down a second time. So he got shot down 2 times in 5 days. A $1 million helicopter, totally destroyed both times, and walked away from both of them. So to me, that's pretty much a miracle, and it's pretty much an unusual event, I would guess.
Yeah.
For good luck. To pray, I guess, probably more than anything else. I think a situation like that pretty well tasks your faith, and I was very fortunate, I think, in being pretty solid in my faith in God. And as far as rubbing a rabbit's foot or anything like that, no. But I did do some praying, I guarantee you. Coming home for Vietnam vets, as most of you know, was kind of different than it was in World War II. In a lot of ways, the Korean vets had the same kind of thing, except I don't believe there wasn't as much dissension in the States during the Korean War. You know, most everybody supported the troops, but in Vietnam, you know, there was a lot of dissension here in the States, and while we were in the service, we really didn't hear a whole lot about that. But you felt it when you came home. When you came home, a lot of times people didn't bother to even acknowledge the fact that you were gone. I mean, you know, you'd come home and they'd say, "Oh, hi, how you doing? You know, what you been doing? Oh, you were in Vietnam. Okay, no big deal." But for the guys that was there, it was a big deal. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting story. When I was when we got shot down on the 3rd of March, on the 8th of March, I'm sorry, I got taken to a field hospital at Quang Tri, and then was transferred after 3 days. Was transferred by helicopter to a hospital ship called the USS Sanctuary. And so this gal comes in, you know, with this box, you know, and rolls a cart in there, and she said, "Okay, we're going to let you call home." And so there's this box there, and it's a ship-to-shore radio. So I have to go through a ship-to-shore radio to a ham operator, to another ham operator, to my mother, which was on the other end of the line. So when you said something, when you got done saying something, you had to say over and click the mic. And when she was talking into the phone on the other end, so then you'd hear this guy transfer what you had said to somebody else, who would transfer it to somebody else, who would tell your mom, "Yeah, he's okay. He's just on a hospital ship. Got shot down the other day." You know. So I mean, that was kind of funny in just the way it came about, because it took 5 minutes for you to say, "Hello, Mom, I'm okay." Yeah, I did. 2 guys I was in flight school with, Vance Harris, a fellow by the name of Vance Harris, who was an air traffic controller after he got out of the service, and another close friend of mine was a fellow by the name of Mike Burblinger. His name was actually Michael Kenneth Burblinger, and we called him Kenny a lot. Anyway, he was my roommate in flight school. And he graduated from flight school as a helicopter pilot, went to Vietnam, and on the 31st of October of 1971, he was shot down and killed. He was a very good friend, a guy that I think about a lot. Was 19 years old when we were in flight school. Now most of you, I'm guessing, are what, 13, 14, 15, somewhere along in there? Mm-hmm. He may have been 4 or 5 years older than you when he died. And he was flying $1 million helicopter when he did it. But he was a good friend. And I remember him a lot. Well, I don't know. My involvement in Vietnam has been an ongoing thing for about the last 40 years, as you would imagine. Of course, I was busy raising a family, kind of like everybody else that came back from there, I suppose. And working for, I worked for A.B. Chance Company in Centralia for about 43 years, so the career took precedence over a lot of things. But since I've retired, I've kind of put on my bucket list, I guess, some things that I need to do before I die. And some of those things was to reconnect with some folks that I was in close proximity with, I suppose, in Vietnam, shared experiences with in Vietnam, and haven't seen in over 45 or 46 or 48 years now, I guess. 1971, 47 years. So I just got back last week, actually, from Las Vegas. If you want to lead into that, Las Vegas, there was a reunion there of the Special Operations Unit, and our company, our Alpha Company of 101st Aviation Battalion, 101st Airborne, supplied a lot of the transportation needs for the Special Operations Forces in Northern I Corps in Vietnam. And we had been asked to join them in their reunion. So there were about maybe 20 Comancheros, and the red patch on my jacket over there is a Comanchero patch. There aren't too many of us left, but it was the unit I was with in Vietnam, and so my wife and I went out and shared acquaintances, I guess, and stories, I guess, over what's been going on for the last 45 or 46 or 47 years. So that was a neat thing. And then another pretty neat thing back in, I think it was maybe May or June of this year, there are four crew members on a helicopter when you're flying an insertion. So there were 4 of us that got shot down in Laos on the 8th of March. Well, one of those guys, the door gunner, was a guy by the name of Gary Stuklich, and he lives up around Carrollton, Missouri, in that area, up there, Plattsburgh in that area, and he had a broken pelvis in the crash and never received a Purple Heart. After 47 years, he finally, in June, received his Purple Heart. And it was the second time that I had seen him in 47 years when I went up to his presentation of his Purple Heart, and that was a neat thing. Oh, no, not really. Other than a Purple Heart for getting shot down. Had some shrapnel on my leg and lost some teeth in the process. But no Silver Stars or Congressional Medal of Honor, or not any Audie Murphy Congressional Medal of Honor. I mean, he truly deserved that. But I got a Purple Heart finally. It was 35 years after the fact.
Once you came back, was it hard to readjust, or did everyone, like you said?
No, I don't think. Well, not for me. I was kind of fortunate, really. Some of the guys that I've talked to at this reunion spent 12, 13 months in Vietnam, and during that period of time, the period of time that I was over there, from about the 15th of February of 1971 to about the 15th of April of 1971, we lost over 1,000 helicopters. And it's was one of the biggest losses of the Vietnam War. So a lot of those guys spent 12 or 13 months over there getting shot at. I was lucky in that I was only with my company 8 days. I only got shot at a few times compared to these guys who were going out there and getting shot at every day. And that's got to work on your mind a little bit. When every day you get up and you wonder, is today going to be the day that I get it? And I only had 8 days to worry about it. So that, even with the injuries, that made me pretty fortunate. And I definitely honor those guys who were there the whole tour and have had to endure that since then.
Do you guys have any more questions you'd like to ask? Okay.
Thank you very much.
I think that's it. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
you doing it.
Appreciate you
Appreciate
coming
you wanting
here.
to know, actually. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Richard.